I left my house under the cover of darkness, the moon a silent witness to my escape. The night air was crisp and biting, yet it was a welcome relief from the suffocating atmosphere of my family. Each step on the gravel path felt like a defiance against the chaos I was leaving behind. Massachusetts' dense forests loomed ahead, promising solitude, but also uncertainty. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the sounds of the night enveloped me. The rustle of leaves and the distant call of an owl created a symphony of unease. I had always found comfort in nature, yet tonight, the woods felt alive, breathing, watching. I quickened my pace, trying to shake off the sensation that I was not alone. It was just my imagination, I told myself. Just the echoes of my troubled mind. The moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy above, casting long shadows that danced menacingly on the forest floor. My thoughts drifted back to the arguments that had pushed me out into this solitude. Each harsh word from my family rang in my ears, a cacophony of disappointment and frustration. I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing on my chest, squeezing the breath from my lungs. Then I stumbled upon a small clearing, the ground littered with leaves and twigs. It seemed peaceful, a perfect spot to gather my thoughts. As I sat on a moss-covered rock, I closed my eyes, trying to find solace in the stillness. But the silence was deceptive. It felt charged, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Just as I began to relax, a noise shattered the stillness. A snapping twig, sharp and clear. My eyes flew open, heart pounding. I scanned the darkness, but nothing moved. It was probably an animal, I reassured myself, forcing my breathing to steady. Yet, the anxiety clung to me like a second skin, whispering that I was not welcome here. I stood up, feeling the urge to flee, but curiosity pulled me deeper into the woods. Each step felt like a surrender to the dark forces at play. As I ventured further, the trees seemed to close in around me, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air grew thick with an unsettling energy, and I felt as if I were being drawn towards something I could not comprehend. Suddenly, I came across an old, dilapidated cabin, half hidden by overgrown vines. Its windows were shattered, and the door hung crookedly on its hinges, as if inviting me to enter. A sense of foreboding washed over me, yet I felt compelled to investigate. What stories lay within those rotting walls? I hesitated for a moment, but the urge to escape my own thoughts drove me inside. The interior was dark and damp, filled with the musty smell of decay. I fumbled for my flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows. The cabin was a graveyard of forgotten memories, broken furniture, dusty shelves, and tattered curtains that fluttered like ghosts in the breeze. Each item I touched felt heavy with sorrow, as if it were a relic of lost hope. That I in the corner, I spotted a collection of photographs, their edges curled and yellowed with age. I picked one up, revealing a family gathered around a table, faces bright with laughter. A chill ran down my spine, an inexplicable sadness washing over me. Their joy was a stark reminder of what I had left behind, and I felt a pang of longing for the connections I had tried to escape. That as I turned to leave, a sudden draft swept through the cabin, extinguishing my flashlight. The darkness enveloped me, and panic clawed at my throat. I fumbled for the door, but something stopped me, a whisper, barely audible, curling around my mind. It was a voice I didn't recognize, yet it felt achingly familiar, like a memory I couldn't grasp. "Stay with us," it seemed to say, a haunting invitation that sent a shiver down my spine. I stumbled backward, heart racing, and in that moment, I realized I was not alone. The shadows in the corners of the cabin began to shift, coalescing into shapes that felt almost human. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but I was frozen, caught in a web of fear and curiosity. As I stood in the suffocating darkness, the voices grew louder, swirling around me like a tempest. They spoke in hushed tones, weaving tales of despair and longing. I could feel their presence pressing against my skin, an overwhelming sense of loss that threatened to consume me. Was this the escape I had sought, A descent into madness where my own fears took form. I stumbled toward the window, desperate for the cool night air. As I reached it, the glass shattered outward, shards glinting like teeth in the moonlight. I gasped, realizing the voices had stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence that filled the cabin. I glanced back at the room, and the shadows seemed to retreat, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. "Leave now," a voice hissed, sharp as a blade. My heart raced, and I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut before I could reach it. Panic surged through me, and I pounded on the wood, desperation clawing at my throat. "Let me out!" I cried, my voice echoing in the suffocating darkness in that moment. The shadows swirled around me, coiling like tendrils of smoke. I could see faces forming within the darkness, anguished expressions, mouths moving silently, pleading. It was a kaleidoscope of lost souls, trapped by their own despair. I felt a deep sense of empathy for them, but also an overwhelming fear. Just as I thought I would be swallowed whole, the door flew open, and I stumbled out into the night. I gasped for breath, the cool air biting at my skin. I ran, heart pounding in my chest, my thoughts a chaotic jumble. I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest had changed, that it was no longer a refuge, but a labyrinth of my own making. Asterisk, don't forget to subscribe for more chilling tales that linger in the shadows of the mind. Asterisk. As I fled deeper into the woods, the familiar path became a twisted maze, each turn leading me further from sanity. The trees whispered my name, their branches clawing at my clothes as if trying to hold me back. I stumbled, falling to my knees, the weight of my fears crashing down around me. The voices echoed in my mind, mingling with my own thoughts, a cacophony of despair that I thought of my family, of the chaos I had tried to escape. But now, I realized the chaos was within me, a storm I could not outrun. The forest had become a mirror, reflecting my deepest fears and insecurities. I was lost, not just in the woods, but within myself. Each step I took felt like a betrayal of my own sanity. As dawn approached, the first light pierced the canopy, illuminating the path ahead. I stumbled toward it, desperate for the promise of safety. But as I emerged from the trees, I found myself back at the cabin. It loomed before me, unchanged, a sentinel of my nightmares. I was trapped in a cycle, a torment I could not escape. The whispers began again, softer now, almost soothing. "You can't leave," they cooed, wrapping around me like a shroud. I felt my resolve crumbling, the urge to surrender to the darkness growing stronger. But deep within, a flicker of defiance ignited. I would not let the shadows claim me. With a surge of strength, I turned away from the cabin, forcing myself to run. The forest seemed to part, the path opening before me as if guiding me home. I ran until the trees faded into the distance, but the voices lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder of the darkness I had faced. I returned home, but nothing felt the same. The walls of my house seemed to close in on me, each room echoing with the weight of unresolved tensions. My family was still there, but the connection felt frayed, as if we were strangers sharing a space. The shadows of the forest followed me, whispering secrets I could not forget. At night, I would lie awake, haunted by the faces I had seen in the darkness. I wondered if they were real, or just figments of my unraveling mind. The experience had left scars, deep, unhealable wounds that pulsed with pain. I had escaped the physical forest, but the psychological labyrinth remained, twisting in my thoughts. As I navigated through daily life, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see the shadows lurking behind me. I knew that some battles leave you forever changed, and this was one of them. The woods had revealed the depths of my despair, and now, every rustle of leaves felt like a reminder of the darkness I had embraced. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. I invite you to share your own fears and thoughts, for in our shared darkness, we may find a flicker of light. What nightmares linger in your mind, waiting to be set free? It was supposed to be a simple evening, I had missed the last bus home, leaving me stranded at the lonely bus stop on the outskirts of Middlesbrough. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the distant hum of traffic. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, trying to ward off the creeping chill that seeped into my bones. The fluorescent light above buzzed erratically, casting flickering shadows that danced across the pavement. As I sat on the cold metal bench, I glanced at my phone. No signal. The realization hit me like a punch. I was utterly alone. My thoughts drifted to my family, the arguments that had pushed me out of the house that evening. I had wanted to escape the chaos, but instead, I found myself in a different kind of turmoil. The darkness around me felt oppressive, wrapping around me like a shroud. Just then, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. Turning my head slowly, I saw him, a clown standing just beyond the reach of the light. His painted face was a grotesque mask of joy and despair, a wide grin stretching unnaturally across his features. He wore a tattered costume, the colors faded and dull, yet somehow vibrant in the dark. My heart raced as I instinctively shifted away, unease creeping up my spine that I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, a figment of my imagination. But the clown remained there, unmoving, his eyes locked onto mine. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, a primal urge to flee bubbling to the surface. Yet, I was rooted to the spot, entranced by the horrifying spectacle before me. Who was he? Why was he watching me? The minutes dragged on, each second stretching into an eternity. I glanced around, hoping to see someone, anyone, who might confirm my sanity. But the bus stop was as empty as my heart felt at that moment. All I could hear was the occasional rustle of leaves, the sound amplifying my fear. The clown's presence loomed larger, a malevolent shadow in the night. The clown took a slow step forward, breaking the stillness with a creak of his oversized shoes. My pulse quickened, a primal instinct screaming at me to run. But I remained frozen, caught in his gaze. It was as if he was pulling me into his world, a place where nightmares thrived and reason faded away. I could feel the air around me thicken, charged with an unsettling energy. "Why are you staring at me?" I managed to croak out, my voice barely above a whisper. The clown tilted his head, the grin on his face widening, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too real. He didn't respond, only continued to approach, each step deliberate and unnerving. I could see the glint of something in his hand, a balloon, bright red and ominously out of place against the darkness. The balloon floated toward me, and I instinctively recoiled. "Get away from me!" I shouted, my voice breaking. But the clown only laughed, a low, chilling sound that echoed in the emptiness around us. It was a laugh that sent shivers down my spine, a sound that felt both joyous and sinister, as if he took pleasure in my fear. The night deepened, and the world outside the bus stop faded away. The street lights glimmered like distant stars, illuminating nothing but the void around me. I felt utterly trapped, a prey caught in the clutches of a predator. The clown was now inches away, his eyes glinting with a madness that sent my heart racing. I could almost feel his breath, warm and stale, on my face. "Do you want to play?" he asked, his voice a sickly sweet whisper that dripped with malice. I shook my head vehemently, backing away until I hit the cold metal of the bus stop bench. My heart raced, pounding against my ribs as I realized that this was no ordinary encounter. I was on the brink of something far more terrifying than I could comprehend. Just then, the sound of an approaching vehicle broke the spell. The headlights pierced through the darkness, illuminating the clown for a brief moment. I seized the opportunity, my instincts kicking in. I bolted toward the road, desperate for escape. But as I turned back, the clown had vanished, as if he had never been there at all. The vehicle passed by without stopping, and I stumbled to a halt, panting heavily. Had I imagined him? My mind raced, trying to rationalize what had just happened. I glanced back at the bus stop, half expecting to see him lurking in the shadows again. But it was empty, silent, the only sound my ragged breathing echoing in the night. But as I stood there, I felt an unnatural chill creep over me. It was as if the darkness itself held its breath, waiting for me to make a move. I took a cautious step back toward the bench, drawn by a morbid curiosity. Had it all been real? The fear, the laughter, the feeling of being watched, it felt too vivid to dismiss. Suddenly, I heard a soft giggle, floating through the air like a chilling breeze. My heart stopped. I turned around slowly, scanning the darkness for any sign of him. The laughter echoed again, closer this time, a taunting reminder of the fear I had just escaped. I felt the weight of despair settle in my chest, a sinking feeling that I was not alone after all. Out of the shadows, the clown emerged once more, his smile wider than before. "You can't run away from me," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "I'm always here watching." The darkness behind him seemed to pulse and shift, alive with some unnameable horror. My legs felt heavy, like lead, as I fought against the urge to flee. "Leave me alone!" I screamed, desperation fueling my words. I turned, sprinting back toward the edge of the road. But the night was alive with his laughter, echoing through the trees, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. I could feel him closing in, a presence that crept just beyond my vision, always watching, always waiting. Suddenly, I tripped over something unseen, sprawling onto the ground. Pain shot through my knee as I hit the pavement. I scrambled to get up, but the laughter grew louder, the clown's shadow looming over me. "You can't escape your fears," he taunted, his voice swirling in my mind like a dark storm. I pushed myself off the ground, adrenaline surging through my veins. The night felt like a nightmare, a twisted reality where I was the prey, and the clown was both the hunter and the embodiment of my fears. I sprinted toward the street, my heart pounding in my chest, desperate for the safety of the light. As I reached the road, I turned back, half expecting to see him right behind me. But the bus stop was empty, the shadows swallowing the last remnants of my terror. The world around me felt surreal, as if I had crossed some invisible threshold between reality and nightmare. I could hardly breathe, the weight of what had happened pressing down on me like a heavy fog, that I waited for what felt like hours, my eyes glued to the darkness, fearing he would emerge again. The bus finally arrived, its headlights cutting through the night like a lifeline. I stumbled onto the bus, breathless and shaking, the driver casting me a concerned glance. I slumped into a seat, staring out the window, my heart still racing. As the bus pulled away, I glanced back at the bus stop. The clown stood there, a dark silhouette against the flickering light, his grin unmistakable. I felt a chill run down my spine as our eyes locked for a brief moment. He raised his hand, waving goodbye, and I knew that this encounter would haunt me forever. The bus took me away from that place, but the image of the clown lingered in my mind, an indelible scar on my psyche. I thought I had escaped, but deep down, I knew I would never truly be free of him. The shadows whispered his name, and I could feel his laughter echoing in the corners of my mind, a reminder that some fears are never truly vanquished. Months passed, but the memory of that night remained vivid, a dark stain on my consciousness. I avoided the bus stop, taking alternate routes, but the fear followed me like a shadow. I tried to convince myself it was just a figment of my imagination, a trick played by the mind in the depths of despair. Yet, the laughter would surface in my dreams, dragging me back to that night, that I often wondered if the clown was real or a manifestation of my own fears. The laughter echoed in my mind, haunting me, twisting my thoughts into spirals of anxiety. I learned that facing fears doesn't always mean conquering them. Sometimes, it means learning to live with their presence, to accept that they may never truly disappear. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the darkness. I invite you to share your own tales of fear and anxiety, for in the shadows of our minds, we may find solace in our shared struggles. What haunts you in the stillness of the night?